Hello, my dears. It's time for another one of our menopause lessons. I love knowing that with each successive video, you are getting more and more of the education you deserve on menopause. We are still in the risk factor section of our unit on breast cancer, and this unit began with video number 356. The risk factors began with video 366, and this is video number 373 on age as a risk factor for breast cancer. Now, I know that the title, Age as a Risk Factor for Breast Cancer, sounds really straightforward and simple, but it is not. And this video is going to really dispel the misconceptions and clarify the true facts for you. In my book, this material is in chapter 30 in both the first and the second edition. All of chapter 30 is on breast cancer. But in this video tutorial, I'll elaborate extensively on what's in the book. Let's start with the simple observation that if you look at any list anywhere of the risk factors for breast cancer, you will see increasing age listed. Here's a list of risk factors we've created thus far in this unit. So you can see that we are currently addressing the light yellow row designating increasing age as a risk factor for breast cancer. But what exactly does increasing age mean? Now, I know that sounds like a dumb question, but it really isn't. Try answering this quiz question to consider what increasing age implies. Which of the following statements correctly depicts the effect of aging on your risk of breast cancer? A. Your risk of breast cancer increases with every year of your life, but you lose some degree of risk with age. B. Your risk of breast cancer increases with every year of your life, and you never lose any degree of risk with age. C. Your risk of breast cancer is only 1 in 7 if you live beyond the age of 80. Otherwise, it's lower than that. D. Your risk of breast cancer is always 1 in 7 every year of your life, regardless of how long you live. E. Your risk of breast cancer ranges over the course of your life, from a risk of 1 in 300 in your 20s to a risk of 1 in 7 in your 80s. F. Your risk of breast cancer remains stable over the course of your life with a steady risk of 1 in 7. G. None of the above. H. A, C, and E above. I, B, D, and F above. What's your answer? That seems a little bit more complicated than the simple statement, breast cancer increases with age, doesn't it? So now you're starting to see the nuances. I'll go ahead and show you the answer, and then we'll dive into the details. So the correct statements are, your risk of breast cancer increases with every year of your life, but you lose some degree of risk with age. C. Your risk of breast cancer is only 1 in 7 if you live beyond the age of 80. Otherwise, it's lower than that. And E. Your risk of breast cancer ranges over the course of your life from a risk of 1 in 300 in your 20s to a risk of 1 in 7 in your 80s. All right. In the last video, you learned that if you have no genetic mutation for it or first-degree maternal relative with it, your average risk of breast cancer is 1 in 7. This means that on average, you have a 1 in 7 chance of getting breast cancer at some point in your life. So that's our benchmark. But how in the world do we arrive at that statistic? Does the 1 in 7 chance refer to each individual woman's risk of getting breast cancer? Or does it refer to the number of women who get breast cancer? In other words, does it mean that 1 out of every 7 women gets breast cancer? See the difference? So the very first thing to clarify is the fact that this is the risk for a single woman over the course of her lifetime. It is not a designation of the number of women who will get breast cancer, but you'll see that mix of these two meanings everywhere. It's very, very, very common. But there's even more to it than that. It's not a simple matter of having a 1 in 7 risk at all times in your lifetime. This statistic for the average risk of breast cancer is what we call a lifetime statistic. A lifetime statistic is the risk of getting a particular disease over the course of your entire lifetime. That means it's your risk of developing breast cancer over the course of your entire lifetime. So what does that mean? Well, instead of having a risk of 1 in 7 every year of your life, you don't reach that risk of 1 in 7 until you've reached the end of your lifetime. In other words, your risk of breast cancer changes as you age, becoming higher and higher as you get older and older. If we were to break down your risk by age, it would go like this. From age 20 to 30, it's 1 out of 400. From age 31 to 40, it's 1 out of 252. From age 41 to 50, it's 1 out of 68. From age 51 to 60, it's 1 out of 35. From age 61 to 70, it's 1 out of 27. From age 71 to 80, it's 1 out of 25. From age 81 to 90, it's 1 out of 7. So between the ages of 20 to 30, instead of having a 1 out of 7 risk of getting breast cancer, you have only a 1 out of 400 risk of getting breast cancer. And between the ages of 31 to 40, instead of having a 1 out of 7 risk of getting breast cancer, you have only a 1 out of 252 risk of getting breast cancer. And between the ages of 41 to 50, instead of having a 1 out of 7 risk of getting breast cancer, you have only a 1 out of 68 risk of getting breast cancer. Between the ages of 51 to 60, instead of having a 1 out of 7 risk of getting breast cancer, you have only a 1 out of 35 risk of getting breast cancer. And between the ages of 61 to 70, instead of having a 1 out of 7 risk of getting breast cancer, you have only a 1 out of 27 risk of getting breast cancer. Between the ages of 71 to 80, instead of having a 1 out of 7 risk of getting breast cancer, you have only a 1 out of 25 risk of breast cancer. And finally, between the ages of 81 to 90, you finally have a 1 out of 7 risk of getting breast cancer. So the only way you'll ever have a risk of 1 in 7 of getting breast cancer is if you live past the age of 81. But there's even more to it than that. On the one hand, the older you get, the more time you have to develop breast cancer. So it makes sense that your risk increases with age. But along with your increasing risk due to age, you also lose some of your risk with age. Now, before you assume I've lost my mind, hear me out. Even though your risk increases with age, as you make it through each year without breast cancer, the risk for that year disappears. It's behind you. You made it through that year without getting breast cancer. And the older you get, the fewer years you have ahead of you in which you can get breast cancer. So there is some offsetting of your increased risk as you age, simply because you've already made it thus far without breast cancer and you don't have that many more years to go. So your risk of breast cancer actually increases and decreases as you age. In some ways it's increasing, at the same time it's decreasing. Or it's decreasing at the same time it's increasing, however you want to look at it. Wouldn't it be wonderful if aging itself were that way? I mean, too bad we don't get younger at the same time we're getting older. In video 366 on risk, I explain this by using the following example. Let's say you're on an adventure and you come to a bridge. You notice that the bridge is really old and rickety. It does not look like it's safe to cross the bridge. The risk of falling from that bridge is high. So before you cross the bridge, the risk is high. But let's say you very carefully make your way across the bridge and you reach the other side unscathed. Is the risk still high? No. Once you've crossed the bridge, it no longer poses a risk. That risk is behind you. So as you travel through each year of your life without breast cancer, the risk of getting breast cancer in that year disappears. The more rickety bridges you have to cross, the greater your risk overall. But every time you cross one, you erase the risk of crossing that particular bridge. So your risk increases and decreases at the same time. So if we were to draw a graph of breast cancer risk increasing directly with age, without losing any of that risk along the way, it would look like this. This is an inaccurate graph of breast cancer risk by age. Here you see ages from 20 to 90 on the horizontal x-axis, and you see risk level from 1 to 7 on the vertical y-axis. But if your breast cancer risk just increased with age, without losing any of your risk along the way, it would create a straight line like the one you see here. But that's not what an age-related breast cancer graph actually looks like. Instead, it looks more like this. So now you see that the accurate graph of breast cancer risk by age shows increasing risk until age 70 with decreasing risk after that. And this is because you lose some risk as you put the years behind you. So an average lifetime risk of 1 in 7 is about a 14% risk. And the way you arrive at a 14% risk is by adding the average risk at each age. Let's say your breast cancer risk by age is roughly as follows. From age 20 to 30, it's about 0.3%. From age 31 to 40, it's 0.4%. From age 41 to 50, it's 0.5%. From age 51 to 60, it's 1.5%. From age 61 to 70, it's 3%. From age 71 to 80, it's 3.7%. And from age 81 to 90, it's 4%. All I've done here is convert the 1 out of X number of risk to an approximate percentage. So if you add this up, you get about a 13.4% risk. All you do is add up the risk for each of these age groups, and it comes to almost 14%. So you see that 14% is actually an exaggeration of your average lifetime risk for breast cancer. It's actually somewhere between 13 and 14%, which is between a 1 in 7 and a 1 in 8 risk. But the big thing to realize is that 14% does not reflect your risk at any one time. It's an overall lifetime risk. As I taught you in video 366 on risk, one of the most basic principles of risk is the fact that the time frame is always important when you talk about risk. Without a time frame, risk is meaningless. So if we do what we've done for all the other risk factor videos thus far and expand our risk factor chart to include the specifics you've learned today, it looks like this. And I've minimized the other factors on the list for lack of space. All I've done is divide the increasing age cells into specific age groups and given you the individual risk by age group. This ever-expanding chart is available in the description box link and at menopausetailor.me. The summary is that while your risk for breast cancer does increase with age, your total lifetime risk does not reach the 1 in 7 or 14% level of risk until after you reach the age of 81. And even though your risk increases with age, it also decreases with age. And I think that's it. So we'll stop here today, and next week I'll present the reproductive risk factors for breast cancer. If you need to address any of this or anything else on a personal level, please go to menopausetailor.me to schedule a consultation with me. That is the only forum available for tailoring anything specifically to you. You'll find me on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, and Stories, and you should definitely subscribe to this YouTube channel and my newsletter before you leave here today. Bye, my friends.